coat. But if I can't have you, I don't want nobody else. Put my love upon the shelf just like you do. And if you won't have me, why do you let me think you would? Maybe for someone else you could give all the loving that you should be giving me eventually.
Hello and welcome to WNHH Radio's Dateline, New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make our community tick. Today we're commenting on the commenters, something we do from time to time when the news and the comments on the news get lively in New Haven. So much to talk about. So interspersed with recordings by local New Haven musicians, like what you're listening to right now, the Afro-Semitic Experience, we will read some of the cream of the crop from reader comments on the latest New Haven independent news stories, and then we will comment on those comments. And I front-loaded today, folks. Joining me is going to be Harry Dross. He's the station manager who makes all the magic happen at WNHH-FM. He's usually behind the scenes, except when he does his own rip-roaring show where he breaks the mainstream media in 9 parts or more. But Harry's going to join us today, reading out loud with me some of the most intriguing and challenging comments from these New Haven independent news stories. And in between, we're going to play some local musicians' work. The first one's going to be a lot longer than the others because that's, Harry, that was the most, was the liveliest exchange of the week, was about bus stops on the green. People have a lot of opinions about bus stops on the green. I found another guy ODing on my way in today. I smoked something bad on the green as I come into work. The officer said, the guy said he picked up something off the ground and smoked it. And the ambulance came, and the cop said that's usually not a good idea of where you should find your product. But in any case, there's been a lot of discussion since last summer when we had over 100 people had to go to the hospital from freaking out from some bad batch of K2 within 3 hours. People have been talking what happens on the green. Keisha Ricks went to a meeting of a working group called the Overdose Working Group. And just for the record, we're just as guilty in the press. We use overdose as a shorthand, even though what happened with K2 was, in fact, they took the regular dose, and it was just a potent dose. But that's a public health issue we get beat up on a lot. But in any case, at this meeting, they had the proprietors of the Green, that cabal that runs that private group that owns the Green. You had city officials, you had others talking about what should we do in the Green. And the question came back up of whether they should move the bus stops. A lot of the central connections are bus stops on the Green. A lot of people come from all over the state to New Haven for drug treatment. And then they end up on the Green, even if the drug treatment centers are not near the Green. So advocates say we're really trying to get the state to move those bus stops somewhere else. A lot of other people said you're just trying to push poor or needy people from the Green. So, Harry, let's see what our readers had to say. Some of them we'll just do because it was an endless discussion. I got it from both Facebook and on our site. Oh, you want to start out, Harry, with what retired guy had to say?
Question: could moving the bus stops that ring the New Haven Green lessen New Haven's opioid problem? Answer: no. I love it when the day begins with an easy question.
3/5, one of my favorite commenters of all time, said...
That's some retired guy, right?
Yep. 3/5 said, this is snake oil and 3-card money being sold. I remember they used to do 3-card money in the Green. Anyway, this is not about the opioids problem. This is about pushing the poor and working poor from downtown due to the gentrification of downtown. Did I live here or agree? What do you have to say, or she, Harry?
We have to move them. This is the largest issue in New Haven. The bus stops lower the highest property values in the city, which in turn lowers tax revenue and prevents us from doing everything we need to with schools and police.
So you see, I think Harry, you might agree with me that this gets into some nuanced conversation. A lot of issues come to the fore here. I accidentally, Harry, wrote a doubled one here, but going to the bottom here. Abdurim Shakir wrote, how is moving the bus stops going to solve overdoses? This is another smokescreen where ignorance and fear is deployed to hide the real agenda. And then Kimberly Edwards, she's an Alder, by the way, Board Alder, New Haven. She wrote that she lives in New Harville. They've wanted to move them for years to preserve downtown for the Yale demographic. But then Harry, Robert Greenberg, he's the guy, the preservationist, the guy who had the Acme store with his father. He's in New Haven. He surprised me with this comment, Harry. What did he write?
Move the bus stops and the green will be green again. Create a humane bus hub where people can be warm in the winter and cool in the summer, and have a monitored bathroom facility like Grand Central has done successfully, okay? Have a small store like Union train station. Wait, where?
Have a small store like Union train station.
Union train station has, and create an environment that's conducive to riding mass transit, and a positive outcome will happen. This has been proven all across the country in cities larger than New Haven. I've ridden the buses on and off for years, and standing in urine, stenched, broken window, missing panels, and unmentionable things in these bus stops are not going to help clean up the problem here. Frankly, it sucks being in those stops. I think those that work in City Hall, including the mayor, should be forced to ride the buses at least a few times throughout the year to feel what the public are dealing with. That's one of the things I loved about Mike Bloomberg in New York City. He rode the subways to work and dealt directly with the issues of the masses, and he is a billionaire.
That's why I think there are a lot of issues here, Harry, that first have to do with what kind of people on the green, but sometimes it has to do with what's the best way to run the bus system and connections. And there actually are various sides.
Well, let me just say this about Bloomberg riding the train. I guarantee that the stops that it took for him to get to City Hall were pristine and clean, and the people went above and beyond while the mayor was on the train.
And I'll bet that didn't happen.
Okay, now
I'll bet you anything, because I've ridden that train, including when he was mayor.
Including when he was mayor.
Yeah, I mean they were fine, but
because
no,
if
there were just too many people, Harry, and there was enough money.
If you travel the rest of
the state runs that.
If you travel the rest of the subway system, it sucks, and urine and all of that is the least of things you have to worry about in the subway system.
It is
in
broken
New York.
down there. Yeah. So Joe Jeffrey wrote, this rings every gentrification alarm bell. Economic development, social and public health supports are the keys to solving addiction crises. Could there be a better public transit arrangement in the city? Definitely. Input needs to come from all. And Jesse Richards wrote, yes, I'm sure rich elderly white people in Woodbridge will come up with the right solution for this. Massive sarcasm, if that didn't translate. So now one of our other longtime commenters, Anonymous, answered 3/5. And what did Anonymous have to say, Harry?
You can have a more universal system, keep bus stops downtown, but still increase efficiency and speed for everyone, which is the main barrier to use, and create more usable public space along some of the more crowded sidewalks by moving some transfer waiting points to places. This is insane. If you're going to move the transfer point places, you need to put them where they're needed, where they make more sense logistically. These things are not exclusive, but a good plan is needed. Making a more efficient system would dramatically increase ridership everywhere. So the idea it will somehow remove lower income or disabled people from downtown or limit their access seems silly to me. Improvements would likely do the opposite, allowing even more buses to come through downtown each hour, which is good. Disabled people and people earning minimum wage spend money and contribute to downtown too.
Again, we're talking here on Dateline New Haven about comments posted to an article in The Independent by Markeisha Ricks about whether to move the bus stops that are on the New Haven Green elsewhere and whether that would help with the problem of drug use and abuse.
Where would they be moved, Paul?
There are a lot of suggestions. One suggestion, they wanted to create a hub at the Union Station where you'd have like a nice place to wait for the bus. Another one was to create the hub on Church Street, the south part near where Church Street South was. Another one was by the State Street train station, because a lot of ideas that you should connect trains better to buses, and that a central place where you wait for the bus should be a nice, bigger place that connects you to other transit. Okay. It's Getting Better wrote, the bus stops are in a convenient location for commuters headed to downtown businesses. And James Sunderland wrote, I'm with 3/5 on this one. I've been catching the bus on the New Haven Green for over 10 years. It's the most logical place for it, as it is the most central location to the rest of New Haven. It's mostly the poor and working poor who take the bus. They're also the population most prone to drug addiction and vice versa. Pushing the bus routes off the green are only going to make life more difficult for those that use the bus regardless of addiction status. We should be focused on humanely treating addiction, not pushing the poor out of sight. Hill Resident, one of my favorite commenters. What did she have to say, Harry?
I have to agree with Antris, and dare I even say it, with 3/5. Moving the bus stops will only dilute the problem and move it somewhere else, and it would make transportation efforts almost impossible for regular transit users who rely on this service. Until the whole routing system is reconfigured, the bus stops should not be moved again. Antris also makes a good point about negative activity being interrupted by the presence of positive energy. When she shows up, that stuff stops. Okay. That happens.
Antris just said, let's just have more people ride the bus. And then when you're on the bus, they don't do skanky stuff that other people are watching.
Okay. And I also smell the snake oil referred to by 3/5. It seems the green proprietors just want to get rid of people who they seem to be identifying as undesirable because the inanimate bus stops are not the problem. It's some of the people who hang out at the bus stops and not the bus riders. Let's have the proprietors pay 2 to 4 constables, extra duty New Haven Police Department officers to monitor the green, particularly near the bus stop area, keeping an eye on who is loitering around the bus stops. Those loitering don't have to leave the green, but they have to move on. Yeah, people love that. They can't hang at the bus stops. That area
That's
should
true,
be...
like who's loitering. If you're like some middle-class person and you want to sunbathe on the green, that's
right.
cool.
That's the
Yeah.
green,
Yeah.
by the way.
It's a park.
It's a park, so you just can't say move on.
But they do that, yeah.
I mean, people love that. Those loitering don't have to leave the green, but they have to move on. They can't hang at... They don't have to leave the green, but they have to move on. They can't hang at the bus stops. That area should be reserved for people who are waiting to catch the bus. Those just hanging out on the green can hang out on the benches and tables and other areas scattered throughout the green. More tables and bench areas can be erected for sitting or alfresco dining or chess games or just relaxing. Yeah, you want to have that down there too.
But we do have that.
Right, but it would be lovely if you had it all over the place, right? And this way you could play chess on somebody who's laying down.
The truth is, Harry, that where the K2 activity is, because the different substance abuse groups go in different part of the greens, they are on the upper green on benches.
Even the upper green. And the constables can keep an eye on those as well. Perhaps Apps Foundation, CMHC, YNHH, and LEAD can assign some caseworkers to spend a few hours every day walking and checking up on folks downtown that might make use of their services. Erect a depot. That's actually what San Francisco does, right?
We actually do that now, and we're going to do more of that.
San Francisco actually has their whole service, industry wrapped around all the homeless in that area.
And New Haven has some people doing that occasionally on the green. There's the one guy we walked around with from Hill Health, and they're going to do more of that outreach stuff.
Erect a depot on the other end of the green across the library and courthouse where referral services can be offered to those who might need them. The bus stops themselves are not the problem. Will moving them lessen the problem? As retired guy said so eloquently, no.
Patricia Kane weighed in on this comment thread in The Independent about the idea of whether to move the bus stops on the green. She wrote, the proprietor's, quote, solution, close quote, of more events fails to address the need for public toilets and actually making the green more attractive for everyone's use. We cannot move the, quote, problem of needy people around, and we can't hide them. The drug poisonings were an aberration, and do notice how the bogus war on drugs continues to fail, despite the millions of dollars spent arresting and incarcerating vulnerable people. Where is the creative planning to give all people a place to be during the day when they cannot be in their, quote, shelters? Why don't the proprietors put able-bodied people on the green to work cleaning it up or planting flowers? Moving a bus stop is just plain ridiculous because it ignores reality. Maybe the proprietors can set up some housing so people won't have to sit on a bench all day and remind us of the big winners and big losers in today's society. Harry, what Erin Pendrag is running for mayor, and she weighed in. What did she write?
Do they really think that moving the bus stop away from the green is going to put an end to drugs and crime? Talk about a naive way of thinking. By decentralizing the buses will create inefficiencies and cost the city and the transportation companies more money. This simply cannot happen. Pendragon. What is that? Pendragon?
Erin Pendragon, I think.
Pendragon? That's a name?
Yep.
Wow. Mayoral candidate.
Quinchion, I'm probably saying that wrong. Quinchion wrote, I like the idea of there being a mini transit center at the green. Overall, I think the bus station should definitely be approved by having the number of stops reduced, or perhaps a new study of the express bus system would be interesting. Harry, let's skip a page there.
Wait a minute. So reduce bus stops?
Actually, that's a big issue. The state wants to do them. There's an argument that we have them too close together so that the buses take too long and it creates backups and it makes inefficiency in the system. There actually are studies about what's the ideal number. I'm thinking State Street. They said like a State Street. Other people say, we don't want to walk those extra blocks in the bad weather or for disabled have kids. Other people say the expectation shouldn't be a stop at every block or every 2 blocks. It's just how you run a system. There actually is a lot of argument, I think.
I don't know. There's a lot of bus stops in New York.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So at the next, let's skip ahead to Kevin McCarthy. You see his comment?
You said skip a page?
Yeah. You see what says posted by Kevin McCarthy?
Yep.
Yeah, what did he say?
Federal law, Title 6 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 complicates this discussion. This law prohibits federal grantees, including ConnDOT, the operator of Connecticut Transit, from discriminating on the basis of race in providing their services. If moving the bus stops had a disproportionate impact on POC,
people of color,
it almost certainly would. It would be subject to challenge.
Well, you know what Challenge had to say. There's a woman named Challenge, and you'd know her at all the rallies. She wrote, more reactionary, unfounded smoke and mirror solution. How is moving bus stops a solution to the drug crisis? If anything, it will simply move the problem to another side of town, like the Hill, where many hang out now. Also, why punish public transit riders, making them have to walk further to catch a bus because of the behaviors of people who don't even live here? Bus stops need to be central points around the green. The problem on the green is a long-standing issue. It did not begin with a one-day crisis last year. Don't use the unfortunate situation as an excuse to move bus riders who are predominantly poor elsewhere. This plan is likely about moving gentrification in the downtown area further ahead. End the rhetoric now. Wondering how many people on the planning committee depend on public transit? I will venture guess. Few or none. Real solution. Require people with addiction issues to receive treatment in the city where they live. I don't know if I like that idea. New Haven should not be the hub for addiction treatment. Each town or city should take care of their own and leave bus riders alone. So, Harry, maybe skip one more page.
Well, you see, that's the thing that they actually think that somehow moving the bus stops is going to move the hub for addiction. That New Haven's a magnet right now for that.
Well, some people feel like we'll take them straight to where they get their treatments, but the green is a place to hang out. Yeah.
Nope.
But what that comment is talking about is how we're the only state that lets you have dirty urine. We're the only city in the state app that lets you have dirty urine to get and still get drugs treatment because they have a different philosophy. That is a legitimate argument that you're going to do the most good and help people if you do that. But then if you're the only one doing it, we get people from Hartford, Willimantic, Waterbury.
Get rid of the whole thing.
Get rid of what? Drug treatment?
Giving people drugs.
Methadone? Methadone works.
For some people.
Yeah. But I mean, it has a high rate.
Not for a lot of people.
What would you do, Harry?
A lot of people,
just let people
that's
die?
their dealer.
Just let people die?
No, you got to find a different way.
Yeah,
Instead of just helping them get drugs.
Okay. You want to go to Eva G? The page later.
Eva G. The drug overdoses on the green are awful. However, it has not stopped me from riding Connecticut Transit to and from work, the movie theater, running errands around town. I am one of the people who waits for buses at the green. I do it on a nearly daily basis. God help whoever has to stand next to me while I'm waiting for a bus, reading the newspaper. All hell might break loose. I'm mad, bad, and dangerous to know. So now that I've come clean on my side, Antris and 3/5 and all the others who point out how nuts this is are dead on. Moving the buses off the green is not going to solve a damn thing about the what to do with drug users issue. And it will make probably thousands of people's lives a lot more complicated, dare I say worse, for no genuinely honorable reason. Moving a problem is not solving a problem, but moving bus stops will create a greater number of problems. I can promise you, for countless people who just wanted to get to where they needed to go and had no plans involving illegal drugs, people like me, the ones who you see just waiting at the bus stop, making chit-chat or reading a book or their phone or whatever. I resent being treated like I'm the problem when I'm part of the solution.
On the one hand, I agree with the commenters, Harry, that the umph behind this issue was the overdoses and people not wanting this activity on the green. When you bring in the bus stops, of course, that's not going to solve drug issues. But there's a whole separate conversation that has nothing to do with drugs. I ride the buses. The buses are the system is completely broken. And in New Haven, we've been saying that. The state just spent 4 years doing $1 million study to repeat at the end what New Haven said 4 years ago. The routes make no sense. It's a hub and spoke system relying on hours when people don't work, but they used to work those hours, to take them places they don't need to go where the jobs aren't anymore, and don't take them like the Universal Drive or West Haven where the jobs are Post Road enough times where they can actually rely on public transit. The schedules are based on people working early factory work, getting out early, and the city shutting down at 5 or 4:30. This system is so broken that, separate from this issue, it's still not getting fixed because the State Department of Transportation is the Department of Cars and rich people. They put a lot of money into highways and people, Fairfield County people commuting to New York and people up at Hartford. So it's tough when these issues come up, Harry, and I like this discussion because it shows how it's not clear cut. Yes, the motives are people who have more money and want to do business downtown are concerned about the scene on the green and whether that's going to make it hard. Some people tell me it just makes it hard for some businesses to work or some apartments to rent, but in fact, it's doing pretty well there. And it's how do we manage things? And I think the suggestions were good about having more outreach workers on the green. I do think a hub for the main hub for the bus stopping somewhere else is not a bad idea. If you made it a nice place at Union Station or the State Street Station where you could sit and relax, and where it's hard to maneuver all those buses at the green there. And that doesn't mean you have no bus stops in the green. Of course you need bus stops in the green because that is a central place in town. But to have all these routes that it can take you hours to go a couple of miles because of how crazy this hub and spoke system is. You go all the way to the green and then back somewhere else. And everyone agrees with that who looks at it.
Well,
and that doesn't solve the drug problem, but that is true.
When I lived in New Haven and I didn't have a car, when I first came to New Haven, that I was looking for work and everything, I was limited to where I could look for work, what hours I could actually
Like
get
if people
to
want to
work.
work on Universal Drive, they can't work on weekends or night.
It's just
If you live in
insane.
West Haven, you want to go there, or if you live in New Haven, you work on the Post Road.
It's insane.
You got to build hours in, and you can't get back at certain times.
So you're fighting for. There's jobs in other towns, but you're fighting for the same jobs in New Haven with everybody else because you don't have the transportation to get to another place.
And that's just so broken. And
it's insane.
And as people wrote, even though I do ride the bus, it's mostly poor people because the people who have no other options tend to take it. Now, part of urban renewal and urban revival in this country is having people of all income groups not having to have a car and liking to live in a city and liking to use mass transit. We haven't invested in that, I believe, because of the political will. But
I don't know.
All right. So you know what? We did a lot.
It's been broken a long time. I don't see it.
We've been doing, and yet I really like riding the bus. I think the buses are clean. The people are nice. The drivers are nice. I actually think it's a good system, except for this crazy scheduling system and routes. But okay, off the soapbox, on to some local music. This is Paul Bass and Harry Dross on Dateline New Haven. We're reading comments from the commenters. We did the whole first half hour on the bus stops on the green. We're going to read some more comments from other stories after listening to a little more local music, and we won't be going as long on those. And we're going to start with so you've been listening to the Afro-Semitic Experience, but I'd like to hear one of my favorite local musicians, Natalie Tuttle, and she has a song called "The Fix," which I think is beautiful, and you're going to hear it now on Dateline New Haven.
She was a different kind of cold, but she was the same kind of crazy. The apple didn't fall far from the tree, at least not enough for injury. She was a different kind of wind, but I tell you her heart felt like a breeze. We'd wake up with such ease, with no one to please. I was a mess the day we met, and somehow I thought you were the fix. But I woke up one morning, said I gotta get over this. It took a while for the rest of my life to feel the twist, that without you on the other side, I couldn't draw the line on time. I was a mess the day we met, and somehow I thought you were the fix. But without you on the other side, I couldn't draw the line on time.
The Fix by New Haven's own Natalie Tuttle. Man, I love that song. Here on Dateline New Haven, I'm your host, Paul Bass, with Harry Droz, the man of many hats here at the radio station, joining me to read comments from commenters to the New Haven Independent about pressing local news, while we listen in between and in the background to local musicians like Natalie Tuttle, you're hearing in the back with Irony. What I love about The Fix, Harry, is do you ever have songs that you love how it sounds on a recording? And when you see it live, like sometimes music's more exciting live because of the energy and the connection with the crowd. But sometimes when a song is so well produced, I'm disappointed when I see it live. Because like with that song she wrote, she fairly delicately at certain key points has a second instrument come in. And it's very tight, the whole thing, and the way the background vocals, which I'm assuming are hers, add the right texture at the right place. And she's a sound person. She's a performer. She like does the sound and counts music quality she used to. Do you ever have that feeling with music, or you like the live recordings and hear it live just as much?
No, I mean, I'm not a concert person, right? I don't really. I've gone to maybe in my life maybe 5 to 7 concerts, right? And I've only really enjoyed one.
Which one?
And it was Mary J. Blige,
Mm-hmm.
and it's because she was better live than her produced stuff. And her produced stuff is great.
And that's true about a lot of people, because some people, not her, they have syrupy arrangements. And a lot of times live, you're feeling the energy and the stripped down, especially solo performers, how they interact with the audience. But there was this whole trend in the 60s and 70s that there'd be an album that was popular with some singles. Then the performer would have the concert album come out, which I felt didn't work on a recording, because live music is different. You know, a lot of times they play it the same way, but it just sounds a little different because it's live and that's perfect.
And I love acoustic versus the overproduced.
Yeah. So you know who does it away unlike anybody else is Bob Dylan. So he's my favorite ever. I've seen him a whole bunch of times over the decades. And he does something really smart, in my opinion. He doesn't try to play the live music the way it sounds on a recording. He sees live music something different. Like he's in his mid-70s, I think, or more. Late 70s. He's still touring more than just about anybody in the country. He just loves live music. And he gets a pretty hardcore band going, and he does some of the solo acoustics sometimes in between. And he reinterprets his songs over and over again into a different kind of song, because when you're live, it's not that kind of fine precision of production, which he has a real ear for.
Yeah, he's probably also one of the most creative people ever. He is.
And the other interesting thing about seeing him live as a result is that you don't know what you're going to get. So I've seen him times that, even though I'm a Dylan freak, where he was absolutely awful live. And other times they were the best concerts I ever saw, like at Toads in 1989. And it's because he takes the risk. He doesn't do the safe thing. Okay, I had a hit, you bought the record. I'm going to come out and try to make it the same. So, but we're not here to talk about that, Harry. We're here to talk about New Haven independent controversies where our commenters take it to a higher level. And I really do believe that. They bring up so many interesting points about having lived it, like with the bus stops. They ride the bus, they hang out on the green. They deal with addiction. One of the great debates this week have to do with the flock houses. Now, this isn't only a New Haven type town gown issue. At the Yale School of Architecture, Harry, every year, I don't know if you knew this, the students have a competition to design a house. And then they pick a winner. And they go into a poor neighborhood. And they build, sometimes with, it depends if it's Habitat or not, they build a house for a low-income person to move into and get and keep, and sometimes rent out a second apartment. Stabilize neighborhood, bring new housing to a community as a gift, sort of town ground gifts so the students can learn. And over the years, there was a little tension about this, typical town ground tension, in that there was a feeling in some neighborhoods that these modern designs are kind of experimenting on us. Like that stuff Yale does in the community. Sometimes there's a feeling like with the anti-poverty programs or medical trials that are aiming for a high good to solve world problems. They feel like we're the guinea pigs. But other people say, but you know what, it's a fair deal because it's also giving to our community. So in this case, some people say, what a great thing they give us these houses. And other people say, these ugly, modern, crazy things come right in our midst and screw up our blocks for some project you have. But other people say, modern, like Tony Harp was saying, she went to school of architecture. It's good to have modern ideas in architecture. Remember history, keep the scale, but try out new ideas. Practically, that does things like have better energy efficiency, have more space people live, but also aesthetically, it gets people to think in new ways, and you build on history for new worlds. So the Flock House, because neighbor complaints, from some neighbors, not others, the city put new restrictions on the next house they're going to build on Plymouth Street in the Hills, saying you have to these kind of materials and have this kind of elements in your design to fit in, putting restrictions on it, which kind of put the whole process into question. So the first comment came from Hill resident. What did she have to say, Harry?
This is ridiculous. The Columbus House is providing housing for 3 families.
Oh, that's right. I forgot to say they're giving the house to Columbus House, which is a homeless agency, which is then going to put families in that house.
The YSOA is designing and building the houses at no cost to the city. Why does it have to look like every other house on the block? The city is crying out for affordable housing. Why put these sign stipulations on the project at this stage? The homes that the Block project build are beautiful, energy efficient, unique, and families are proud to own or rent them. They bring more than bodies to a neighborhood. They bring people who have an appreciation for their home because number 1, it is new. Number 2, it is one of a kind. And number 3, it is theirs. The stipulations put forth by zoning are without foundation. There is no way this new home can screw up the neighborhood. And the concerns of the groups from the management team are unfounded. They ask the same questions every time and get the same answer every time. The CMT is not concerned about affordability or design. It's about control. Come on, Hill South. We can do better than that. Give some residents a chance to have something nice. Help get some families off the street. Give some kids a home and stop being a bully.
She has such interesting comments, doesn't she?
Yep.
She's amazing. Okay, SB kind of went on a similar line here. It's hard to, here's what SB wrote. It's hard to see how this doesn't wreck the whole project, given the late date of the requirement. The deal here is that super affordable housing gets built at no cost to the city. In return, the architecture students get valuable experience in design and building. If you take away the design part and have the community management team specify the design, then what is left of the deal? The city's Steve Fontana's comment that they are getting the house for $1,000 and can afford to do something nice is way off base. That means we're selling them to Columbus House just $1,000. And he's saying, therefore, you can afford to do better. The charitable contribution is running from the Block program to the city, not the other way around. He has the story backwards. Look, if Fontana can find a private developer who will pay more for the lot, then build a beautiful new Queen Anne house and then turn it over to Columbus House to rent it out to the formerly homeless. Then he should go for it. But of course he can't. If the deal falls apart, everyone loses, most especially the poor tenants who would have been able to live here. But there's another side to it, Harry. What does Susan Anthony write?
This is an example of hitting a gift horse in the mouth. Horrible. Perhaps the ones that made the stipulations should design and build the project and see how far they get.
Oh, I was wrong. She was agreeing. So Brewski wrote, maybe it's late in the game to make these requirements, but I totally understand the concern. Look at the monstrosity the School of Management plopped down across the street from the Peabody. This is a great program, but students are trying to stand out and be innovative. That doesn't always translate into improving the aesthetics of the neighborhood. So, you want to head over to Elm City, Yale at the beginning of the next page? The end of the next page. Okay.
Elements: a steeply pitched gable roof with exposed rafter ends, bracketed barge boards along gable rakes, and porches with turned posts and balusters and spindle work.
So that's quoting what the requirements are that the city has put
this
in.
is their requirement.
That's what they're telling them they have to do. I can't explain that for you. I don't know Greek, but I probably can translate Greek better than that.
With regard to the desired design elements, it would be interesting to know if any of the parties involved have analyzed the existing houses built in that style to understand the type and cost of maintenance required to keep the units in good condition over decades of aging. A simple walk down the block of any area in the city with such houses reveals the many challenges of elements wearing away paint and wood. I would hope for a modern approach to the design and selection of construction materials that incorporates more weather-resistant approaches to whatever design elements are involved to minimize costs and effort of long-term maintenance.
Annie writes, good chance for the Yale students to learn about contextual reality and let go of their egos for a change. So Annie's supporting what she's doing. The other, so it's kind of teaching the students you don't get to just be in your bubble. You have to interact with the real world. The other projects make neighbors feel like second-class citizens. Why shouldn't they get gentrified Shangri-Las? Make a better block, not a signature object that denigrates the block. Kevin McCarthy, the ultimate voice of reason, what does he write?
The design requirement obviously has provoked controversy. Here's an idea I hope will be less contentious. I think the School of Architecture should agree to make the designs of buildings constructed under the program available to other developers at no charge. This would be particularly useful for folks trying to develop infill housing. Brewski and Susan, I live 2 blocks from SOM. It really does stick out like a sore thumb. In contrast, the nearby 1954 Environmental Sciences building next to the Peabody Museum does a much better job of respecting its neighbors, even though it is obviously a 21st century building.
So what's your take?
You know, I say let creativity, flourish. Let these guys push their limits to see. It's true. We're moving into the future. We're not going backwards. Let them be.
All right.
It's free. It's free.
All right. Harry Drost, the voice of the people. Harry, can we cue up to Bisa?
Yep.
All right. So we're doing local headlines, local comments, and local music here on Dateline New Haven. I'm Paul Bass here with Harry Drost. We've been reading some of the comments from the provocative ones from New Haven Independent, and we've been playing some local music. And right now we're going to play, you can watch it too. We do this on high rotation, is one of my favorite local musicians, Tabisa. And tune in and watch it here on WNHH FM.
Ditivula, dianqonqosi. Ditivula, dianqonqosi. Onabo tsotsi, onabo laita, nabo tsotsi, bayansuge. Nabo tsotsi, onabo laita, nabo tsotsi, bayansuge. Ditivula, dianqonqosi. Ditivula, dianqonqosi. Onabo tsotsi, onabo laita, nabo tsotsi, bayansuge. Gong 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 gong. Gong 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 gong. Gong 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 gong. Kau boleh menyanggah aku, kau boleh sanggah lagu, kau boleh tingene bo. Hai kau boleh menyanggah aku, kau boleh sanggah lagu. Ayah sugela tati bo. Yeah. Gong 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 gong. Yeah, scam digging big dig it down. Scum dig it down. Scum di dabble do 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 dabble. Scum dig it down. Scum dig it down. Scum do dabble 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 do dabble. Avulelo nyango wako, kawuvulelo sango lako, kawuvule dingene bayandi sukela bo. Yeah. Kawuvulelo nyango wako, kawuvulelo sango lako, kawuvule dingene.
Tabiza. Wow, she's amazing. She lives in Westville now, from South Africa, originally doing Vula here on WNHH FM. I'm Paul Bass with Harry Drost here on Dateline New Haven. We're doing local music and then local commenters on Stories to the Independent. We have only a few minutes left. CCM is ready to take the mic. So, Harry, we're going to need to do an abbreviated version of the next one because we could do a whole hour on this. We had a story that provoked a really interesting conversation about the project in New Haven and nationally to take guns that are turned into cops and turn them into gardening tools at local schools. In our case, at the one, I forget the name of it, at Common Ground. So anyway, they did an event at a church on the green Sunday night where they had people actually beat the guns, including a woman whose kid was shot to death. And people talked about, because they made a religious case. Someone goes around the country, wrote a book on this and did this project. Oh, I'm getting weird feedback. I'm not sure. They get this weird this project, and they said it's a religion case. They feel like evangelical Christians like themselves have made gun ownership into almost a religious imperative, where they feel the religious imperative is to stop having so many guns. And there's the usual gun control arguments. I know you're passionate about, Harry, and there are two sides too. And given that we don't have time, I thought we could skip that argument because I want to bring up something really interesting that was brought up by one of the commenters, and they went back and forth about whether they should even be talking about this stuff in church. So if you go to the third page, you see 1644. So he's writing about this event where the guy made a speech saying, come on, Christians, we got to be for gun control, turn guns into plowshares. And they did it at church service. And 1644, this is the church, one of the churches on the green. I think United Church, one of the oldest ones in the state. What is 1644, right, Harry?
First paragraph?
Yeah, this stunt.
Okay, this stunt exemplifies why I stopped supporting my church. It is too politicized, as the clergy and the congregations have turned the institutions into another way to promote their divisive political views. As a conservative, I know that I am no longer welcome in the church I grew up in, and haven't been since at least the Bush years. I miss it, and don't feel comfortable in more evangelical, extroverted congregations. The UCC is dying. It's sad.
William Kurtz wrote back, hey, 1644, no one less, quote, politicized, close quote, than Jesus. Am I right? What is 1644? Because some of us do believe Jesus was the original socialist. What did 1644 write?
Not at all. Jesus rejected the Zealots' call for the political revolution and said, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's.
1644 continued. I just want to do because there's another whole argument about knives versus guns, which I didn't want to get into now because we really don't have the time. It would be interesting. But a few pages later, William Kurtz writes, Jesus rejected the Zealots' call for political revolution, wrote 1644. Well, I'm no theologian, and interpretations of that passage disagree. But Jesus' words concern the legitimacy of obedience to civil authority and adherence to civil laws, and don't seem to address the question of whether it's appropriate for people's religious convictions to shape their views on public policy. Would you also agree that it's, quote, too political for pro-life activists to criticize abortion or urge legislators to pass restrictions on it? Which is a really good question, Harry. What does 1644 write back?
I think I'm lost here.
To one comment next, where he says WK. He's writing back to WK there.
I am for all in this one?
Yeah, I am all for.
Okay. I am all for individuals of any viewpoint exercising their First Amendment rights on whatever issue is important to them. I do not believe religious organizations as organizations should advocate for the state to impose their religious views on others. The leftward lurch of the formerly mainline churches would not bother me if I could find a church home in a fundamentalist congregation. Unfortunately, I am as uncomfortable in them as I am in the church I grew up in and was long a member of. I also recognize that as a congregational church, its majority rule, I listen to
Conference representatives.
conference representatives testify in Hartford and think those who claim to represent me don't. So I know it's no longer my church and I am not welcome there. On scripture, well, Romans 13 is the classic reference to authority citation. Otherwise, the Bible is full of contradictions, such as the parable of the 10 virgins versus the parable of the vineyard. Few like the latter. Generally, most ministers I know so twist the obvious meaning of scriptural passages to match their personal views. Even Dick Cheney would call it torture.
David Hartman writes, why am I reading Christian or any other religion at all in this article? The project was founded by the New Haven Police Department and Yale New Haven Hospital's Injury-Free Coalition for Children. I'm personally insulted. Not at all by the project. It was my idea, but rather by the interjection of religion into it. So that, I'm facing this issue at our synagogue, Harry.
Yeah.
So 1644 is conservative. I'm on the left side of the spectrum. And I'm on his side of this, and I'll tell you why. I hate politics in
the
religion
church
and the synagogue, but there is a good question people are raising. So the reason a lot of people are against abortion are for religious reasons. It's for religious reasons. Or in the case of non-Orthodox synagogues, a lot of the reason people are so religiously anti-Trump on immigration is because the experiences of our religion on immigration and the way we interpret a scripture.
This is the third rail, Paul.
Yeah, I know. And as 1644 points out, you can use scripture to justify any position you want. It was justified to support slavery in this country, and it was used to justify opposition to slavery. But honestly, people go to synagogue or church are going for spiritual reasons that bleed into politics. But I hate it that conservatives now don't have a home, including at my shul, where if you're for Trump, and I have a friend who's for Trump, it's uncomfortable for him there. And yet the other people are very sincere about what's motivating them to come is a set of values that translates into politics, and they want the religious institution to take that stand.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's the third rail. We got to get out of here. But as soon as I start hearing politics and religion mixed, I stop listening. I don't think anybody's authentic when they're talking about politics mixed with religion or vice
And the
versa.
real quest of religion, when it's done in a way that I think is productive and helps us, is humility and a search for greater truths that are cheapened by necessary political dialogue and other venues.
And
it should bring us together, not divide
the
us.
First Amendment should.
Right, we're not talking about legal rights.
I know,
here.
but I'm saying, but it crosses all of the spectrums, right? And the problem is that you have people all over the place saying religious people who actually believe in their religion or the scriptures that they actually read in their churches are practicing hate speech, and that gets mixed. So now you have liberal churches actually adopting different types of messages that don't pertain to their Bibles anymore. And is that church? Or should they just leave their religion? Should they leave their churches? Should they stop following what they follow? Because all you hear is politics in church now.
And synagogue.
And synagogue.
But there's something beautiful and deep about the quest for religious truth and spiritual community that can transcend politics.
I guess.
Harry, we're on the same side of this one.
We are.
All right. Well, thanks, Harry. I really appreciate that. Given all you have to do all day, you took the time to join me in reading local comments and hearing local music on Dateline New Haven today. Thanks, everyone else, for listening. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long here at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.